The Iowa State University did an independent study on the VRTEX 360 and whether virtual reality helped train welders. And what they found out is they took a control group and who learned to weld only using virtual reality. And they weren't allowed to talk to a welding instructor, they never welded before, and when they finished their learning in virtual reality, they went to the weld shop. And they made their welds on a 2F position, using 7018 shielded metal arc welding, and they also welded in the 1G position, 3G position, and the 3F position. What we found out is 100% of the students passed their 2F brake test, and they 100% passed their 1G bend test, both face bend and root bend, which is really telling how someone can learn to weld and pass an AWS test without ever actually welding before. So we wanted to look at why. Because if virtual reality doesn't transfer the skill from the virtual reality to the shop, it's just a toy. And we don't want it to be a video toy, it'd be a very expensive toy. But if the skills can transfer from the virtual reality, as we learned in the Iowa State study, then it's a tool. But why? So first of all, it teaches body position. And if you want to make a good weld, you've got to get in a comfortable body position, one that you can maintain the arc and one that you can see the arc. We're set up as the 2F position, but we're going to show you when you go to, for instance, the 3F position. We're going to show you how to change that. Take the coupon over, lift your table up. And now you can make the weld in the 3F position. Now we're going to show you and switch you over to if you want to do pipe welding. Get your pipe welding coupon, pull this one up. Now we're going to move it into the 6G position. Get in position, show them how you get in position. And so now you can see how you learn body position on the 6G pipe. You can put it way in the ground, or you can lay in the ground, or you can weld overhead. And so now you can get in your different positions for doing welding. And the next, what I think is the most important thing, is you have to read the puddle. And what we did was we actually did high-speed photography on actual welding, and we mic'd the weld. And the reason we did that is we had gaming people then mimic the weld in virtual reality so it looked like a real weld, but also sounded like a real weld. And I often say that a blind person's a better welder than a deaf person. In other words, I like to listen to that weld. And so we're incorporating even the sound into the welding. So you learn to weld by watching the puddle and listening to the puddle. And so when we look at his weld here, he's going to go ahead and make a weld. Now I can take a look at that puddle. And you can see, now you can see where he's actually favoring the bottom piece a little bit. And so by reading that puddle, now he brought it back up in position. And that gives them a better looking weld. And so using the real puddle is very important. Go ahead and long arc it. You hear what a long arc sounds like? That's what happens in real welding. And so when you're welding, you not only watch the arc, but you listen to the arc. And so we're able to then mimic a real weld. And if you can do that properly, you can weld in virtual reality and then go to the shop, and the knowledge and the skills transfer to the shop. And that is why these students were able to make good welds for the very first time. The other question I get is virtual reality easier or harder than real welding? And we actually want to make it harder than real welding. Why? Because if you make it easy and you just feel good about the weld, and you go to the shop and you don't make a good weld, then it wasn't a good tool. And so virtual reality, we actually set the limits and make it more difficult than real welding. So when you go down to the weld shop, you're more likely to make a good weld. We do allow the instructor to change those limits. If they want to make it easier for some reason, we allow them to do that, so you have that flexibility. But the other thing about virtual reality is it takes instantaneous readings on what you're doing. And so if you long arc something where you'd get porosity in a weld, a real weld has a little bit of flexibility where the puddle compensates for itself, but in virtual reality, it instantaneously sees what you do is wrong and scores you improperly for that. And so, therefore, virtual reality is a little harder, but it's a lot better for transferring the knowledge and skill that you learn in the classroom to the shop floor.